It all began in the quiet neighborhood of Burari, in the central Delhi district, back in 2018. Here, on the corner of a modest street, stood the home of the Chundawats, a respected middle-class family. By all accounts, they were well-liked and trusted by everyone around them. They ran a grocery shop and a plywood business. Their store, right beneath their house, was the centerpiece of the neighborhood, a place where everyone came to buy their daily essentials, chat, and share stories. The family was large, 11 members in total. The matriarch, 77-year-old Narayani Devi, was the head of the household after her husband, Bhopal Singh, had passed away years earlier. Living with her were her two sons, Bhavnesh, the eldest, and Lalit, the younger, along with their wives, Savita and Tina, their daughter Pratibha, and 5 grandchildren, Priyanka, Neetu, Monu, Dhruv, and Shivam. They were a picture of stability and unity, hardworking, religious, and close-knit. Until the morning of July 1st, 2018. That morning, the streets of Burari were already alive with noise. Shopkeepers were opening their shutters, children were running errands, and the summer heat was slowly filling the air. But something felt off. The Chundawat's grocery shop was still closed. It was strange, because Bhavnesh, the eldest son, was known for his discipline. He loved the shop like one of his own children. He was never late, never careless. Neighbors waited, assuming the family might be sleeping in. But as the hours passed, unease began to grow. By 8 a.m., concerned neighbors and regular customers gathered outside the shop's front gate. The lights inside the house were off. The door was closed, but not locked. A family friend finally decided to step in and check. What he found inside would haunt him forever. He pushed open the door. The house was strangely quiet. He walked down the narrow hallway, and then froze. Before him hung 10 bodies, suspended from the ceiling in a perfect circle. They were all hanging side by side, their feet barely touching the floor, their hands tied behind their backs, their eyes blindfolded, their mouths taped shut. Their faces were partially covered with cloths. Cotton filled their ears, and beneath them stood 5 small stools, toppled, scattered across the floor. On the ground nearby was the 11th body, that of 77-year-old Narayani Devi, the matriarch, lying lifeless on the floor, not hanging like the rest. The friend screamed for help and ran outside. Neighbors rushed in, only to stumble back out, horrified. Police were called. Within minutes, the narrow Burari lane was flooded with sirens, flashing lights, and hundreds of stunned onlookers. When investigators entered the home, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. 11 members of one family, gone. But it wasn't just the number. It was the method, the precision, and the ritualistic nature of what they found. The 10 hanging bodies formed a perfect circle, as if arranged intentionally. Each person's hands were bound behind their back. Each had their face and eyes covered with strips of cloth, all torn from the same bedsheet. Their mouths were sealed with tape. Their ears were stuffed with cotton wool, and their legs were loosely tied, not tightly, just enough to restrict movement. There were no signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle, and no signs of theft. It was as if the family had walked willingly into their own deaths. The police quickly began collecting evidence. They found 8 mobile phones, all belonging to family members, but strangely, all taped and locked away inside a single drawer, hidden from sight. They found no sign of poison, no trace of sedatives in the kitchen, no struggle marks on any of the bodies. Autopsies later confirmed that every one of them had died from asphyxia due to hanging, and that there was no sign of struggle or resistance. That detail baffled everyone. How could 11 people, even children, submit quietly to something like this? If it was murder, it was beyond comprehension. If it was suicide, it was beyond belief. The first theory was obvious: a mass murder. But who would kill them? The Chundawats had no known enemies. They were respected in their neighborhood, kind, generous, and successful. The second theory, an occult ritual gone wrong, began to take shape when police discovered something strange upstairs. In a small room near the hanging site, they found a stack of notebooks and diaries, 11 years' worth of handwritten notes. And these notes changed everything. The diaries belonged to Lalit, the younger son, aged 45. He was known as quiet, serious, and spiritual. After a traumatic head injury years earlier, Lalit had become withdrawn, but more devout. He claimed to have visions, often saying that his late father, Bhopal Singh, visited him in dreams. At first, his family thought it was just grief, but soon, Lalit began to insist that his father's spirit was guiding him, instructing him how to run the household, how to handle the business, and even how to conduct rituals for prosperity. Over time, his influence grew. The family trusted him completely, believing that through him, their late patriarch was still watching over them. What police discovered in Lalit's diaries revealed just how deep this belief had gone. The diaries contained detailed instructions for spiritual practices, rituals, prayers, and meditations. They spoke of achieving moksha, salvation or liberation of the soul, through discipline, purity, and ritual sacrifice of ego. But the later entries turned darker. The last pages described a final ceremony, called the Kriya, a ritual that would, according to Lalit's writings, bring the family closer to their deceased patriarch and ensure divine salvation. The instructions were exact: how each person should tie their hands, cover their faces, plug their ears to avoid worldly distractions, and suspend themselves in unison. It also said that Narayani Devi, being too old to stand, would lie on the floor during the ritual. It was all there, step by step, and every single detail matched what investigators found in the house. One line in the diary chilled detectives to the core. It read, "After the ritual is done, everyone will help each other untie their hands." This suggested that the family didn't believe they would die. They thought it was temporary, that they were performing a divine act, one that would bring their souls closer to their father and grant them spiritual rebirth. Lalit had even written that they would perform the ritual again in the coming week, this time for good fortune, as Priyanka, one of the granddaughters, was soon to be married. They had plans. They were preparing for a wedding. They weren't expecting to die. It was a tragedy born not of violence, but of faith, delusion, and shared belief. Psychologists later described the case as shared psychotic disorder, also known as folie à famille, a condition in which delusional beliefs are transmitted from one family member to another. Lalit, deeply traumatized and mentally unwell, had convinced the rest that this ritual would lead them to salvation, and they trusted him without question. To them, it wasn't suicide, it was transcendence. Still, not everyone was convinced. Some neighbors insisted that an outsider might have been involved, that the diaries could have been planted, that the ritual setup was too elaborate for children to comply with voluntarily. But investigators found no evidence of foul play, no DNA, no forced entry, no sign of outsiders in the home. Everything pointed inward, to the family's own belief system, nurtured quietly, hidden beneath the surface of an ordinary life. Even today, years later, the Burari Deaths remain one of India's most chilling modern mysteries. The home where it happened has been sealed, its walls painted over, its windows boarded shut. Locals avoid the lane after dark, and though authorities officially ruled it a case of mass suicide due to shared delusion, many still whisper that something deeper and darker happened there. Some say the spirit Lalit claimed to hear might have been real. Others believe it was madness. Either way, 11 lives were lost to a single belief. A belief that their souls could rise beyond the body, if only they closed their eyes, plugged their ears, and let go. Today, the memory of the Chundawat family lingers like a shadow over Delhi's crowded heart. A reminder that sometimes the most terrifying mysteries are not born from evil strangers, but from love twisted by faith, fear, and devotion. This is the story of the Chundawat family. The 11 souls of Burari who sought salvation and vanished into silence